Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
Welcome, everybody. Episode 326 of the Better on Draft podcast. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it. Just a reminder, we will be off next week as we will be at the UP Beer Festival. At least I will be there. So feel free to come by and say hi. But let's go around and see what everybody is drinking, starting with Wendy. Wendy, what do you got?
I have picked up one of Rob's Robert's lemon woo bars from Eastern Market. It is deliciously tart. I hope that he thinks it does his mom's favorite dessert justice. And just to keep my bases covered, I also have a Juicy Bits from WildWorks.
Daniel, what do you got?
All right, going hard with my own stuff today. I've got a bottle of my Bolshevik Baltic Porter and my go-to Gulag Russian Imperial Stout.
Getting ready for a show tonight, I see. What are you going to see tonight?
Pantera and Metallica.
All right. We do have a guest host with us today. Gary, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you're drinking and a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Gary. Down here in Pooler, Georgia, outside Savannah. I'm drinking a little Seed right now. Continental, little baby crusher because it's hot out here still. 92 degrees today. Yay. Just ready to rock and roll and have some fun today.
All right. For myself, I have an Alaskan Amber from our great guests from, was it just last week, 2 weeks ago? And then I also have a milkshake stout from the now RIP Rochester Mills Brewery production facility. At least we should still be able to get these beers over at the brew pub, but no longer in stores. With that in mind, we do have a guest to join us, a little bit different than our normal type of guest. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and of course, what you're drinking.
Good afternoon, or actually evening. Harold Remlinger, DesignTeam Plus. I'm the principal architect, and we are a brewery architecture firm. We've done 18 projects through the state of Michigan, at various stages for breweries. And what am I drinking? Well, I'm going for my favorite type, which is a triple ale from which is a final absolution from Dragon Mead. And then in my little ice bucket behind me, which you can't see, I have a Thunderkiss 65 from Warwater up in St. Clair, Michigan. And then if we get a little bit too crazy, I got some Hoppy Refresher to go non-alcoholic.
Always good to balance with a non-alcoholic beer, especially with some of the ABVs of the beers that we're getting into on these shows sometimes. So you are a brewery architecture firm. Well, you work for a brewery architecture firm. You are not a physical firm yourself. Right. Let's start with the easy softball question. What are some of the breweries that we might have seen your work?
Okay, so real quick, we got starting from way back when. This will go back before DesignTeam Plus, which is my current firm. I worked on the Great Baraboo Brewing Company in Clinton Township. That's going back to late 90s, early 2000s. Fast forward about 10 years, 2010, the Multi-Dog Brewing Company, which is a little nano brewery and homebrew store in Southfield. And then we took some major steam in about 2014 to today, where we did Draft Horse, Rustic Leaf, Stig's Up and Boyne, Drafting Table. We've done work for Cadillac Straits Supply House and Brewery, Sheboygan Brewing Company. We have currently right now permitted and under construction Heights coming to downtown Farmington, Stumblebum coming to Troy, Michigan, and then a couple of unbuilt projects for Loaded Dice and Black Hop. And awesome. We do have a couple of distilleries that we've helped master plan, and one that right now we're kind of talking to, but can't say who it is and location because it's not for your knowledge.
Well, other than breweries and distilleries, I guess maybe tap rooms, bars, restaurants. Do you do any other design work?
We're very diverse. We basically don't try to do one type of architecture. So we do office remodels, office build outs, obviously restaurants. We do medical. We've done currently that was just opened up downtown Ferndale. We did a therapy park for a therapy center that works with children with learning and mental disabilities. So we created an outdoor therapy park so that they can, have active bodies to get healthy minds. We've worked on religious institutions, the Coptic Orthodox Church, synagogues, United Methodist Church, so Lutheran Church as well. So pretty much across the board. And then we do some small amount of residential, but we still do some residential.
Well, before I pass it off to Wendy, because I know she's got some questions that she wants to ask you, when we think about breweries, we're trying to figure out what's going to keep you in. And obviously you need an aesthetic, you need a look, not just for it to be feasible, like workable, like the ability to brew in there and serve customers. As a person who I am assuming also goes to breweries for fun, what are some of the more overlooked qualities in a brewery build out that you kind of see in a lot of other breweries that they don't take advantage of because they didn't pick you?
A lot of times, not necessarily that they didn't pick me or they had a very tight budget or they tried to do it on their own. Their branding. How are they actually exemplifying their branding, which is, on their cans, on their bottles, within the actual, we call the built environment. We want to reinforce their brand through every aspect of the project, and every aspect of the tap room or the actual brew house. What is your focus and what are you looking at? And, if I gave an example of like Draft Horse, that was, regarding equestrian, having rustic, but also they wanted to show how that they're having the highest quality beer coming out of there. So tap room that's behind me, that's in Draft Horse Brewery right there. So we brought in extremely durable materials that can remain clean, can be pristine at all times because it can be easily washed down. People view it from the tap room and they see that going, wow, their beer must be good because they're keeping their tap room clean. So as for the equestrian side, we kind of made the space look like a tack room inside of a horse stable. And then to actually sort of reinforce the name, which is Draft Horse, going back to horses, which a lot of people don't notice unless somebody tells them or points it out to them, but every table and bar top in the space is made out of pressed straw. So the countertop surface, the table surface is all pressed straw. And then, the rustic comes in with the lath background on their back bar, the rustic barnwood that we had in there, the historic saddles that we had in there. And then a little fun fact, they had sort of a cease and desist on the name from some brewery, which I won't name, but they use large horses to pull wagons around. And they agreed that you can keep the name as long as they don't advertise with horses. So we ended up getting the first township approved in Oakland County, a 2-horse parking space out front that people could ride their horses to and then take selfies with their horses with the name of the brewery in the background. And I think the most they had at one point was almost like 15 horses showed up with riders. So again, a little spin like that we can do to kind of like heighten the brand name and things that people just don't think about, but they're there and they just keep reinforcing, the name of the brewery. We always ask our brewers, give us 3 adjectives to explain your brewery. And then we try to work those 3 adjectives into their project.
Well, that actually leads into one of the questions that I had, because I'm just interested when you started getting into this niche, what are some of the places that you drew inspiration from?
So we try not to mimic or try to replicate somebody else's work. So we focus specifically on the actual brewery and the owners themselves. If they have marketing material that they've worked with a graphic artist for all their labels and their menus and everything of that nature, their logos, we like to get a hold of those. What are the colors that they're using, the fonts that they're using, what is the message they're trying to tell? And then we develop the brewery for them and them specifically. So Cadillac Straits, when we did that, it's all about Cadillac Straits, or basically Straits of Detroit, the Fort Detroit, Cadillac himself. So looking at the bar when you walk in, you don't notice it, but if you look down to it, we actually have a very sharp point in the actual bar top, which actually replicates the actual sort of embankments or cannon towers on the Fort Detroit. So we tried to bring in some historic nature or historic relevance to their project because they were using Cadillac straights, really wanting to do that. We designed a wallpaper with the map of Detroit, historic map of Detroit with Fort Detroit shown on it. Unfortunately, budget came into play. They did not put that in. It's still something that they want to do. So, and then the other thing that they wanted to do, they wanted to be a teaching brewery. So your focus when you walk in the door was the brew house right in their dining area, front and center, bar top that people could sit at and ask questions to the brewer while they're working in there. So again, things like, using what they intend to do to help drive the actual design, but not copying off of somebody else as an inspiration.
Do you feel that breweries are putting a little more thought? I'd say effort, but I think thought is probably the better word for it, into the design and build of their breweries than they have in the last 10 years?
I am seeing a little bit more of a drive and a push towards that. I think some of that's coming from the lecture series that were coming out of the Brewers Guild at the conference, from people speaking about marketing and branding and those items to basically set themselves apart from somebody else. Because at one point in time, it's like almost every brewery you walked into or I walked into, the bar was made out of used pallets. They had used pallets on the wall. They had beer barrel or barrels for table. It was the same motif, the same design over and over again. Raw concrete for the floors, and it's like, well, that's great, but I can go down the street and walk in another brewery, and it looks just like you with a different name on it. So
and the exact same chairs.
And the exact same chairs, which all come from Premier Furniture for some reason, but they're sturdy chairs. They do a good job. I mean, mine breweries have those in them as well. But yeah, I am seeing, even with some of the breweries that we're not designing or working with, but I know the owners and they're going through redesign, I'm seeing that come into it. Sheboygan Brewing Company hired us because they needed to be noticed, and they weren't being noticed. And the first presentation that we did, I said, okay, here's my idea for the outside, and I pulled up a rendering, and I painted the building the color of their blood orange honey cans, that burnt umber and that burnt pumpkin, and their jaws dropped and went, oh my God, that's amazing. And then we did an interior rendering where we designed this wallpaper that had the map of Michigan, and on the map of Michigan was every off-road trail, snowmobile trail, river, hiking trail. And what brought us to that was I went to measure the place, and there was 4 side-by-sides pulled up in front, and they're inside drinking beer going, well, where's the trail to have a side-by-side out front? At least 4 of them. So we started researching it, and actually the Iron Bell Trail, which goes from Iron Mountain to Belle Isle in Detroit, goes right by them. So we present that, and one of the owners goes, I never thought about that. I actually promote and give money to all these trail systems because I use them. So now on their website, if you go on their website, they have all the trail maps as part of their website. So they fully embrace that idea of the outdoors in Michigan, which is one of their key sort of adjectives that they threw out to us. And then we just brought it back into it. We worked with their landscape architect to create a really cool outdoor space. And within the first year of them completing the project, not only do they have good beer, which is helping, but just because people could find them, they had a 52% increase in sales at their tap room.
Nice.
In 1 year. And the following year, it was up 15% from the previous year. So they're doing a great job marketing and getting their beer out in the store, and they're making a really good, amount of beer and tasting beer. But then again, here comes our design that just reinforced all of what they were standing behind and trying to do.
That's awesome. So before I pass it over to Gary, because I
Yep.
know he's got some stuff he wants to ask you, I read a whole bunch of different articles, and it seems like volunteerism has been a huge part of your company culture right from the get.
Yes.
So I was just curious, what are some of the ways that giving back is promoted in your firm?
So every year we try to find an organization, a 501c3, that we can actually go volunteer our time to, or we can work with and give an in-kind gift as part of our design fees to them. So Sherry Stein, my business partner, who she and I were introduced to each other in 2012 while teaching at Lawrence Tech. And somebody had asked us, which was a friendship circle, if we could help design a apartment for a 21-year-old lady with cerebral palsy who's always lived with her parents in an efficiency apartment. And Sherry reached out to me and said, would you be willing to do this? And I said, yeah, let's do it. So that's how she and I got together. We designed that. We called all of our friends in the industry, from construction to IT to millwork, and they all volunteered their time. And we created this space for her to live in and be with her friends and everything else. So from that point forward, we had a nonprofit, not nonprofit, but low profit entity, which was called Team for Community. DesignTeam Plus absorbed it because we wanted to have it part of our core value. So last year during the harvest season, our whole office went to Yad Ezra Food Pantry, and we did a harvest with them. We actually harvested vegetables, washed them, weighed them, packaged them for them to give out to their patrons that need their services and need the food. This year, we're probably going to go to Food Pantry, which is through the St. Mark, St. Mary, St. Philip Hatter parish, which is a part of the Coptic Orthodox Church. And we're going to donate some of our time to there. One of our employees just did a backpack packing for, start of school with one of the chambers, donated his time to do that. And then a lot of us sit on different commissions. I sit on a high school and a community college, Romeo High School, Macomb Community College, for their architectural classes, one of their advisory committees. And then another one of our employees, Joe Alter, she sits on the Macomb Community College one. She also volunteers her time for the Village of Warren Historic District. So we promote this within our organization, and every year we try to do something. And then this past year, we worked with Life Lab Kids, which is the therapy center that I spoke to about what we did with the park. And we did an in-kind gift where we helped select the playground equipment that would be suitable for their clientele and patients coming to them. So it was safe and they could use it, and it would allow everybody to enjoy the park. So, and our firm enjoys that. The employees just gravitate towards it, and it's just that really good feeling.
That's fantastic. And real quick though, why is it important to you as a business owner to do that?
I think, you need to share your knowledge to organizations that sometimes don't have the means to help pay for the work that they're doing or what they're trying to do. We also, because we met this way, we always felt that we need to do it. And this is something that goes way back in my history. I started in 1985 promoting car shows for handicapped Boy Scouts. And I did that for 21 years. And to this day, it is still part of the city of Warren's birthday celebration with the same Boy Scout troop. So it makes you feel good. And I think that's the biggest reason we feel good doing it.
That's awesome. Gary, I'm going to pass it to you.
Thanks. Real quick, Dad, I'm on a live mic here. Dad, I'm on a live mic. Sorry about
that. No problem, Gary.
That was great. You work with the Boy Scouts. As a former member, thank you for helping out. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I think I had the best troop number ever. Troop 711. But I'm going to go a little bit different route here.
All right.
Is I see you do fly fishing.
Yes, I do.
I have done it a couple of times. I just love fishing in general. Where I see you doing you do fly tying. That's an art in itself. Like, what do you like to do more when you do that? Like, what's your favorite pattern? What's your favorite fish you want to go after?
So I love going after salmon and trout. That's usually not something I can get to do most of the time. So here on the island where I'm at, we have a ton of panfish and bass and pike. So I love using like a teeny nymph, or even doing let's see, what's the other one? Royal Coachman works out really well. Some deer hair spun poppers for on the surface for bass. Some terrestrials, doing grasshoppers for on the surface for going after bass in the spring. Prince nymphs are and little beadhead caddis nymphs are phenomenal for underwater for bluegill and crappie. And it's early morning on the canal, just early spring before the weeds and the lily pads come in, nonstop, just pulling out some just monster gills. Salmon, we'll use some beadhead caddis. We'll use stoneflies for under on the water. And then that's just a blast in the middle of the night, standing knee deep in the river, just slammed by salmon, at your legs, almost taking you out as you're going upstream. That's just fun as can be. And then I'm going to be going up in a couple of weeks to do a little bit of brown brook trout fishing. So those will be bringing out some really tiny taped wing caddisflies, or we'll be bringing out some little ant patterns and just sort of scoot those across the surface of the water and have them pick them up. But fly tying, I love doing that because I have a little bit of ADD and I need to focus a lot of times, where I hyperly focus on stuff. So just being able to put those blinders on, having a good beer or bourbon in your hand. Used to smoke cigars while doing it, but I gave that up in 2009. No time, 3-4 hours have gone by, handful of flies have been tied, and you can just look at going, wow, I created that. That's cool. I didn't start doing it to save money, because there's no way you're going to save money tying your own flies. I find you start spending way too much money on material. When you're spending $90 on a hackle or whatever like that, it's like, yeah, no, maybe not. So, but yeah, those are where I get. But we get some monster bass here in Michigan, by Harson's Island on the bay, on Muscatine Bay, and all the tributaries around here.
Very nice. Haven't done much freshwater fishing lately.
Okay.
Saltwater, but yeah, I can relate to that and saving money. I'm making containers full of lures I've never used before. I mean, I got the garage full of fishing rods and reels. Yep. I get that.
Yep. Yeah, it becomes an addiction. I mean, 1995 rolled around and I went, I need a drift boat. I don't want to buy one. I'm going to design and build my own. So I, read all the books on it, read all the books on it by Goujon Brothers on boat building and the West Systems epoxy. And next thing you know, I'm out in the garage building a 14.5-foot stress skin mahogany drift boat, custom design. And I still have it to this day. I do have to do a little bottom repairment because it took a little beating on some rocks and starting to get a little soft, but that's what it was there for. So, but being able to hop in a boat and just go down a river and just be by yourself around a bend and just, wildlife everywhere, you can't beat it.
That is so true. Just kicking back, relaxing. I can't. Very
cheap.
nice.
I always said it was cheaper than a therapist, but after time, I think I spent more on gear than on a therapist, probably.
Nice. Very nice.
Yep.
Can I get one more question?
Go for it.
Cool. Would you ever go do some saltwater fishing, or just going to primarily just stick to freshwater?
I would love to do saltwater fishing. I would love to be on a flats boat doing some bonefish or something like that. I would love to be out there doing that. Haven't had the chance to. Was hoping to when I was doing some work down in Florida, but I never brought my gear down with me and never found somebody to take me out. But definitely that's something I would look forward to doing.
Well, if you get bored, come to Savannah. We don't have the flats, but we do have shallow water, sea trout, flounder, drum.
Nice.
Yeah. We can go up too, have some real fun.
Awesome. I would love to do that.
Sounds good. Cheers.
All right. I want to go ahead and pivot back to the brewery tap room, that sort of build out.
Go for it.
Have you ever had a project come across your desk that you were just flat out saying no to? And why did you say no to it?
So within the brewing industry, we have not turned one down yet. So we have worked with them. Typically, all the brewers that have come to us have been referrals from another brewery. And that's the one thing that we love about the industry. Every owner of a brewery is a friend with all the other owners of the breweries, and they all support each other. And it's to the point of where I actually bring the head brewers and the owners of breweries into my projects to help mentor the entrepreneur trying to start their own brewery. So we have not turned any brewery away, or distillery for that matter. We've always had a great working relationship with them.
All right, now kind of sticking with the same theme there, have you had anyone be unhappy with the finished project, and how did you resolve it?
So, we've had, outside of the brewing industry, obviously, yeah, we've had some clients that may have not have liked the design as we're going through and working on it. We do have within our budget ample time built in to go through reiterations of the design to work to a point to where we can get it to what they do like, and it's within where they want to go in the direction. A lot of times it's communication. Are they communicating to us their actual intentions, or they're just saying what they think we want to hear? So we have to do a lot of upfront just conversations with them as to, what are you looking for? Do you have any inspiration photos that you like that you can share with us? It's hard to read your mind, but if you can put it together in an image, sometimes you get like an image where somebody says they want to do contemporary, but then we get an image of something that looks Victorian. It's like, well, wait a minute, these are two kind of, and they go, oh no, I like the door handles in the Victorian one only. I didn't like the whole thing, but I still want to go the other way. So we have to basically be investigators to come down and basically, pull it out of them. But it's about communication, having that open, means of communication, providing them with, so let me explain the process of our design process. So if we get a brewery that comes in, we talk to them about their size of the brewery, not only just a tap room, because we also get fully involved in doing the whole brew house as well, the distribution area of it. If they're doing canning or bottling, how does that fall into place? We go through their program requirements, as it's called, and then we will get our contract together, and then they sign the contract, we move forward. But first steps first is like, let's look at programming. Let's look at feasibility. Let's look at adjacencies. What rooms need to be next to what rooms based on your program? How does that arrange within the building space that you have? And is it even feasible to do what you want to do in the building that you're looking on leasing? So early on, we can come in and do test fits and feasibility studies on a lease space that they may have not signed a lease yet on, or have signed a lease but have a 90-day, 100-day due diligence period. And if we find out code reasons or spatial reasons or even environmental reasons that, you need to get out of this, it's not a good fit for you, they have that ability to get out. After programming, we go into schematic design, where we start coming up with loose design sketches based on our feasibility and our programming, and we'll give 1, 2, 3 iterations of what that floor plan is going to look like. One example is, Stumblebum Brewing Company. They came to us and they wanted us to design a brewery based around the Scandinavian term huga. But in the meantime, their brewery was named Stumblebum, who was a bum that wandered the United States or wandered the world carrying his little sack on his shoulder that looked like a hop. But he was clean cut and dressed nice. He wasn't really a bum. He was just eccentric. So we go through the whole exercise for huga, and we really went towards Scandinavia heavy. And he's like, this is kind of missing the point for like the bum. He's supposed to be like traveling. And I go, so well, bums travel on like rail cars. So I did a quick sketch of the bar face, making it look like an old rail car. And he went, that's it. That's what I'm looking for. So we changed some other stuff. So again, it's getting, what is it that you really want to have? and how do we actually express it? So he was kind of like, I'm liking it, but I'm not liking it. You're missing the mark. But in the end, we turned it around. It's under construction right now. We were so afraid that we're going to value engineer out the rail car because it was so intricate in building it. And he said, not value engineering that out. That's getting built. So he's moving forward with that. But so back to the process, schematic design, if we have to go in front of the township, the city, for site plan approval, because it's, looking at parking, looking at landscaping. Are they expanding it as a new build? Are they changing the exterior colors? We'll take it through that process. We'll work with them on that. Once that's approved, they love their schematic design. We move into design development, where we bring in all of our consulting engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, structural engineers if needed. We've created a conglomerate of trade or engineers and professionals that we can support the brewery to any extent. We have business consulting agents that can write the business plan and help them get investment packages put together and get financing for the brewery. We have the commercial insurance provider. We have web page marketing and menu design that we can provide to them and give them the name and the referral to. We have biggest one is legal, getting that MLCC license or brewery license in any state. You need a knowledgeable legal team that does this day in and day out, because a lot of breweries just sort of linger waiting for that license to come through. Whereas if you have the professional, or hire all the professionals, you can focus on what you need to focus on, your recipes and your beer. Let us do the work to help your brewery get facilitated. We'll have a handful of meetings with design development. We'll start doing interior design at that time, selecting colors, materials, finishes for the tap room, for the brew house. We'll start showing pros and cons. We'll give adults and deductalts, like, if you put this in, it's going to cost more, but if you take this out, it's going to cost less. So we give options within our drawings. And then once they approve that, we move into the actual, nuts and bolts, or the construction documents, which goes for the contractor, to the city for permits, the health department for health licensing, which is really just the afterthought or the product of our knowledge that we bring to the table. And we stay on board during construction to do site visits, write site reports. Are they following the documents? Have there been any unforeseen conditions? Draft horse. We ended up taking a look at the floor where all the fermenters were supposed to go, and realized that the existing floor needed to come out because it would not be able to support a 20-barrel fermenter on 3 legs. And we didn't want to see a domino effect happening. So, we work with the owner, and we work with the contractors throughout the whole construction process till it's approved, permitted, and open for business.
All right, now keeping with that theme, you don't have to name any names if you don't want to, but
Yeah.
What was the most difficult design that you worked on?
Most difficult design that we worked on. I want to say, I'll name names because it's an unbuilt project, and that was Black Hop, because it was a very small building. The 3 adjectives was crazy, sexy, cool. And the building that they were looking at purchasing was like an ice cream or a pastry shop that was painted pink and purple and teal, with some very ugly ethos on it. So we had to figure out how to get rid of that, make it crazy, sexy, cool, be able to get a tap room in there to max out the occupancy as close as we could to 100 without having to put in fire suppression and sprinklers. But then in the brew house, get a 3-barrel system with 5 fermenters, a distillery in there for doing craft distillation, and a kitchen with a turbo chef conveyor oven for doing flatbreads and sandwiches. I mean, it was a tight fit. And it's like we squeezed every inch out of this project, and it turned out absolutely cool. And then funding could not get, obtained, and the project did not get built.
I'm actually with the words they gave you to work off of. I'm surprised you didn't make it themed off of the band TLC. I think that would have been pretty.
we did catch that, but we didn't want to like go that route. We did some really cool things with their awning because they were black hop, and it was, had the hop motif in there. And the city would not allow you to do graphics that had the name of the building in it. So we took their graphic and exploded it and broke it up on the awnings, that if you looked at the awnings and you knew their logo, you knew it was them, but it didn't say Black Hop. So we did some cool things with the awnings. We did, punched windows in areas, opened the space up, because again, one thing I learned being in this industry and doing a lot of restaurants, I mean, you want to see and you want to be seen. If you're in a cool restaurant, you want people walking down the street going, "Hey, look, there's Dan having a beer. Let's go say hi to him. Hey, he's in a cool place." Or you want to have Dan going, "Hey, friends, come over here, to have a beer with me," because you could see them walking by. The worst thing you can do is just board it up and not let anybody see what's going on inside, because if there's excitement and there's movement inside, more people want to come in to see why is there excitement and movement going on inside, or if you get a band in there playing. So we opened that place up and the city loved it. They approved it immediately. Unfortunately, like I said, it didn't get built, but it was, we brought in for like the sexy, we brought in like iridescent ceramic mosaic tile for the exterior elevation around the entry door. We brought in a lot of lighting that was very glitzy. We brought in a lot of really high gloss finishes on the interior, again, to exemplify a cool space, somewhat crazy patterns in it, but it just was damn right sexy.
And one more question here before I pass it off to Ken, kind of staying on the same theme. What is the weirdest request you've received from a brewery?
Ooh, weirdest request. Crap, what would be the weirdest request? I don't think anybody was weird. Sheboygan was pretty straightforward. Cadillac Straits didn't have anything. They just let us drive it. Stig's. Well, Stig's, I mean, I think one of the odd things there is, I don't know if anybody knows Stig's Brewery Company. There's a whole comic strip about Stig's. He's a lumberjack that saves the world with beer, fighting people like sneaky squirrels. And, I forget what the other ones are. They're a whole series of it. So anyways, bringing in that whole lumberjack theme into the design of the building. And that building was historic preservation. So the cool thing, it used to be an office for a lumberyard that burnt down in late 1800s. Then they moved it to downtown Boyne City, rebuilt it, put brick on it, and made it the offices for the Boyne-Alpena Railroad. And then it was a historic district. So we did full historic preservation on that building. We kept everything. Crazy idea that I did is we did a bottle cap mosaic of the sun setting over Lake Sheboygan on the bar face. And we ran Lake Sheboygan down onto the ground in front of the bar on the floor. And everybody asked why we did that. And I said, well, it's to basically, yes, there you go. So the tile on the floor is supposed to emulate what's known as a running spittoon, where water would flow down in those rough and wild bars of the North Lumberjack Company. And you could either spit in it or you could just stand there and urinate in it while you're drinking your beer. So that was my crazy idea that I brought into that.
How do you go about cultivating all of these bottle caps? Like curating, I guess would be the right word.
We ended up buying those. So they're not used bottle caps, because used bottle caps are always bent and we hated it. So we ended up finding a source to buy unused fresh bottle caps. So we actually collaborated with an artist out of Ferndale who did One-Eyed Betty's, I think it was, or in Ferndale. And she created that on 3 or 4 plywood panels that we then shipped up to Boyne City, and it got put together like tile work on the wall of the bar.
Well, continuing with breweries, a lot of breweries like to focus on sustainability and lessening their carbon footprint. What kind of design aspects can be included to help reach their goals, whether they're doing a remodel or a new build out?
Yeah, so one of the things we look at from the beginning is materiality. what is the material that we're putting in there. We try to source stuff that is predominantly Michigan based or based within the state we're doing the work in. That way we're cutting down on delivery costs and using fossil fuels for having material brought in from thousands of miles away or shipped in from Europe or whatever it is. So we look at items like that. We also look at items of sustainability in the form of durability. What are we putting in there? What is the longevity of it? Is it meeting the standards of commercial grade material? Is it going to wear well? Are you going to have to replace it in 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years? We want something that's going to have some longevity to it. Stigs, the bar top, we source from a local sawmill. So again, we're keeping it local. We're using waste product like from a sawmill. Draft horse, obviously the pressed straw tabletops and countertops. So again, we're taking agricultural waste product and we were using that. A lot of the back bar, which was wood lath, all that wood lath was recycled out of homes in downtown Detroit that were being demoed because they were vacant and they were a blight on the city. So now we're using recycled material, but we're using it in a way that we know it's going to be durable, it's going to last, and it's going to, again, be reused. I have not yet had a brewery be able to come in and do solar energy or solar power on their roof to help with their electrical costs. A lot of these buildings have been small roof footprints, facing possibly the wrong direction, a lot of mechanical equipment on the roof that would, basically not allow for the solar panels to be installed properly in the array that you would need to do on the roof. I have a background with doing solar energy and solar design. I got a project in Treasure Island, Florida with 14.4 kW on the roof. So I have that knowledge, and I taught sustainable design at Lawrence Tech. So I would love to be able to get one of the breweries to go, hey, we really want to, try to do all our lighting and what we can. I mean, but a brewery is very much energy intensive. It consumes a lot of energy, and you can, but use the solar for what you can use it for: lighting, smaller appliances, things of that sort. The only thing with Michigan, we get 4.5 hours of good sunlight on average per day. Obviously, our summers have longer, our winters have shorter, so it averages out 4.5 hours, which isn't too bad because Florida's 5.5 hours average. But it's the payback over a course of years usually gets value engineered and they're cut out of the project because it doesn't pay back in time. You're spending a lot of upfront costs. And again, as everybody knows, breweries are very expensive to get up and running. By the time you buy your brew system, by the time you get if you need a boiler, if you need a chiller, if coolers, all that goes into keg washers. And, if you're doing a full kitchen, that becomes very costly. So there's a lot of just upfront cost within the actual brewery itself to where they're focusing on that. But solar would be one of them. If you have a large property and we can do geothermal for heat, I would love to do geothermal on projects. I've done it for residential projects. I have not had a commercial project do one yet. We do look, if it's a new build and it's a flat roof, we do bring in light color roofing materials so it reflects the sunlight, so you're not having to cool your building as much. Because again, you have a lot of heat and latent heat from the steam within a brewery that we got to get rid of. So you're typically cooling all the time. So that type of ideas, we do look at the glazing, make sure the energy performance on the glazing, any of the walls, we make sure that we're meeting or exceeding all the energy codes for walls and ceiling insulation. So those items we do, and it's part of our core of our office and our design. We always want to be sustainable. We always want to think about the environment. We want to always do the holistic approach to a project, regardless if you're a brewery, if you're a medical office, if you're a retail facility, if you're a cannabis facility. We always want to bring in that holistic approach of bringing in, making sure that the highest performing buildings we can get for the use in which you're using it.
Well, Thank you for that answer. Obviously, I know a lot of people, the upfront cost to a lot of these projects, sustainability, solar, carbon dioxide reuse, like a lot of that is extremely expensive. And as you said, breweries are expensive to start. But what about for, like, say for instance, there are people out there who aren't necessarily doing a new build, like you talked about Stumblebum. Maybe they're trying to go into a brewery that's move in, like say Fort Street Brewing down in Lincoln Park. That's still up for sale.
It just sold.
Oh, it just sold.
They auctioned off all of the brewing equipment a while back, and the building just sold. So I'm trying to get an invite or invitation, or a not an invitation, but basically an introduction to the owner. So I have somebody who sits on the DDA down there, and they're possibly trying to get me to come and do a quick lecture to the DDA on restaurants and design, to see if somebody will bite and think about doing something with that place.
So obviously, now that my example is not necessarily current, what about like a brewery that maybe has been not brewing for the last few years? They've been out of business. Like, what is something that someone going in, or even for a restaurant, like what are the things that they should look first for, structural wise, that, you know, because you don't want to go in, buy it, and then there's $100,000 bill that just lands on you. Like, what are some tips you would give to new restaurant entrepreneurs who are trying to get into a turnkey restaurant?
Got a great examples on that. You know, some of the ones, I mean, say it's been sitting for a while. I mean, you know, if it's a restaurant, we had a lot of fog, fats, oils, and greases going down that drain. You know, one of the first things is get those drains scoped, have your grease trap inspected. Is that grease trap actually working? One of the other things I suggest first off is get a hold of the city engineers, because some communities will not allow you to connect a brewery up to a municipal waste system, because if they have a small community and they have a private treatment facility, they may not be able to handle the BODs that you're sending down in your waste, your bioorganic demand. And we've had, Lyon Township is a perfect example of that with Draft Horse. And the first words out of their mouth was, "You will not connect to our sewer system. You will, you know, contain, pump, and haul all your waste off your site." And we went, no. So we had to teach to them, because they didn't understand that beer was still 98% water or whatever it is. They thought we were putting all this waste down the drain. We had to tell them that we're doing side streaming, you know, taking a spent grain, spent yeast true, getting rid of that before we start flushing stuff down the drain. But we've had a distillery that wanted to move in that township, and I said, go talk to the engineer. And he called me up afterwards, said, "Oh my God, they were like lecturing me like I just broke their law, and I was already operating, and all I wanted to do was get some advice from them." So city engineer number one, talk to them. What can you send down the drain? What are they going to make you do? Some cities may have a tariff or an additional cost on your waste because you're an industrial use and your industrial waste, and they have to pre-treat it. So they'll charge you extra for that. So that, waste lines, grease traps, rooftop units. Are the rooftop units functioning? Get a reputable mechanical contractor to look at them and fire them up to make sure that they're operating. Also have them check your hood. You know, has that hood been cleaned? Does the Ansel system work for it? If you're doing something with grease and frying underneath it, if it has an Ansel system, if it's existing in the space, make sure that's up and running. Do you have the proper water line coming into the space? Because again, breweries have a high water demand. Can you have the proper pressure to do what you need to do to brew your beer? And then the other thing is, you know, try and get the specs on the water from the city. I mean, if it's coming out of the Detroit municipal water system, you know, your water's pretty darn good. But if you're coming from somebody that's pumping it from a well, treating it themselves, putting it in a storage tank and pumping it to you, can they supply your demand? Or, you know, are you going to get rusty water coming at you, and now you got to put a full RO system in, which is cost that you didn't think about. Trench drains, are they in the proper location? Flooring, if it is an existing restaurant that you're going to put your brewery equipment in, does it have epoxy on it? Is it the proper epoxy? It's not going to get broken down by the cleaning agents for your brewery tanks. Are the trench drains and epoxy done right? Because that has been always the biggest, maintenance item for any brewery that I've seen is the epoxy cracks right by the trench drain, and then you're constantly repairing it and patching it and redoing it, and it becomes a nightmare. The other things too on that is if it was an existing, say, bar or restaurant, they had an existing cooler for beer and they have tap lines. How old are those tap lines? How old is the equipment? Do you want to risk cleaning it, or is it better to just to pull it all out and redo it? So again, that's one of the items to look at. How long has this building been sitting? Because again, that is going to, become an issue. We've had restaurants and breweries go in or a brewery that go into an existing restaurant that had the proper size hot water tank. And when they filled it, they found out that this $9,000 water tank leaked like a sieve because the previous owner never drained it, and it froze because they shut the heat off to the building for 3 years. And it broke seals everywhere. So those are the items to start taking. It's mainly the mechanical systems, walls, roof, structure, flooring. Take a look at what's your flooring. We just went through with a distillery that wanted to take over and purchase a building, and it had a basement. It's right where the fermenting tanks will go to get their low wines, where the distillery was going to go, and everything like that. And this building was built early 1900s. It was supported by 2x8s. You're not putting any load on that other than people walking back and forth. So that became like a $40,000 cost just to rebuild a small section that was maybe 300 square feet of flooring to be able to support the load and the weight that was going on top. So those are the items to start taking a look at. Those are usually the larger ticket items. Finishes, walls, stuff like that. Those are usually lower, and those can be worked out easily. But the bigger items, structural is roof structure. Is it wood? Is it metal? Can it support a chiller if you're putting a chiller up there or 2 chillers up there? Can it support the fans for your hoods if you have hoods? Especially if you have an open boiling ton or louder ton. I mean, the steam's just going up. You got to have a hood over that. So you got to put equipment on the roof, a fan, everything else. Do we have the capacity to support that weight? So that would be from a structural component. Those are about the items I can think about.
All right. Well, as we end each and every show, we all ask one final fun question to get to know you a little bit more before we send you on your way.
Awesome.
Starting with Wendy. Wendy, what is your final question for Harold?
Well, I am pretty sure that you've been to a brewery or two. So I'm just curious, is there a brewery out there that you have been to that you did not get to design that you're like, man, this place is cool?
Ooh, wow. There has been a couple. It's going to be one down in Houston, Texas. And I remember something Buffalo. I can't remember the full name of it, but it was a really, really cool space. The entry was really neat when you walked in. It was 2 or 3 stories. You could look down into the brew house, had a massive outdoor seating area. It was just a really neat space. So that one, it comes to mind the most.
Buffalo Bayou.
That's it. Thank you.
Gary, what's your final question for Harold here?
What would you like to build next?
What would I like to build next? Yeah. Ooh, I want to get. I'd love to do a brewery or distillery that's larger than 20 barrels. I like to get into a very large facility and be able to do something like that.
Dan.
All right, we'll keep this one really simple. What is your favorite beer currently?
So my favorite beer style is going to be Belgian Triple. And anytime I see one on a menu, I'm going to go ahead and try it. If I had to say the favorite of that type would be Dragon Mead currently. But I do have sort of favorites at each one of the breweries that we designed. Sneaky Squirrel up at Stig's, 18 Hands High over at Draft Horse, Silverback at Rustic Leaf, Evil Penguin at Sheboygan Brewing Company, or I'm sorry, Cadillac Straits Brewing Company, the Blood Orange Honey at Sheboygan. Yeah.
That's the one thing I do. I don't get a chance to like drink and not drive, so I always have to go with the lower ABV beers these days, and Belgian triples are never available. So I'll if I get Final Absolution at home or Unibrew, Le Fin de Moon, I'll bring that home. So I prepped you for this question before we
Yes.
go tonight. Back when we had John Mallet on the show, he talked about a brewery in Southfield called Etouffee, which was a brewery and restaurant above, I believe, the Star Southfield theater.
Yes.
This brewery was put in and then basically bricked in to the point where I believe it was impossible to get out, and was still in the facility as of when Star Southfield closed in the year 2020. So my question to you is, whose idea would it be to have done something that crazy, and how would they have gotten it out after the fact?
Oh my God. I have no idea who would have thought of doing something like that. Who would want to sit there and build in equipment that you could never remove, never replace, never service? That's just nuts. I think the only way you're going to get it out is when they demo that place completely and redevelop that site. I know it's been shut down now since 2006 is when Etouffee closed. And then I know the Star Theater shut down the theater during COVID in 2020 and then never reopened it. It's still just sort of dead there. So yeah, I don't know. I would never design something that you can't service. That's a challenge sometimes, especially when you get very complicated buildings as to how do we get something in and how do we get something out. And knowing from the brewing industry, a lot of the equipment suppliers, they just drop your equipment at the curb. It's up to you to get it into your space. So, I mean, at that point, that was stupid.
And it's mechanical, so it's going to fail eventually.
It's going to fail. Yes, something is going to go wrong and something you're going to need to replace. I just don't understand why anybody would have done that.
Yeah, I don't know, because the lore of the brewery has grown since 2006, because obviously I actually was trying to research it earlier today, and all I could find was a Crane's article about it opening and a Crane's article about it closing. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Steven Johnson talked about it in his Detroit Beer Book as like a little blip, but that was about it. So I was just curious about if you knew anything about the physical site itself, if it was still there, if there's, anything going on. But yeah, as you said, if something goes wrong and you have to replace something, like you can't even replace, like you have to fix it or you're done. So
yeah, I mean, it's maybe that's why they closed down, is because the beer just sucked.
I didn't say
I don't know.
Who am I going to offend?
I don't know.
17 years ago.
I will be honest, I've never been there, and I've never been to that Star Theater. So I've never personally stepped foot in that location.
I wasn't old enough to drink by the time they closed, so I will definitely age myself young there. Harold, how do they find you? Someone wants to open up a brewery, a restaurant, needs some architecture help. Where can they get a hold of you?
Where they can get a hold of us? Okay, we have our webpage, which is www.designteamplus.com, which is all spelled out one word. We do have the Design Team Plus Facebook page. We do also have an Instagram page. And then we also have our YouTube page, where we have some of our renderings and animation walkthroughs on some of our religious facilities that we've worked on. So those are the areas. Phone number 248-559-1000. It would be where they could call to get a hold of us, and love to talk to anybody looking on or expanding or thinking about doing a brewery distillery.
What about a winery?
I'll do a winery. Yeah, anything. Craft beverages. Just put it that way. I'll even do something that does, non-alcoholic beverages. That's like up and coming.
All right. Harold, thank you so much for joining us. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it. That is going to do it for this episode. Stay tuned. We will be back with the craft beer news segment. But no matter what you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.